that maybe the government might find itself backed into a corner, such pressure, and in return for solid European support, they could be looking for something back on the corporation tax front.
Yeah, I've heard this being said, and on the one hand we can all talk about European solidarity, that they have our back, and Donald Tusk and Michel Barnier made that commitment in the Dáil and publicly, but now they're looking for some kind of a payback. Now, I wouldn't be shedding any tears about corporation tax whatsoever. I think the corporation tax rate in this country is obscene and it's wrong, and we've always argued that, but it'd be interesting to see, do Europe try to get a payola for the so-called solidarity that they've made a commitment on? And I know Mairead is shaking her head, but I have a lot more doubt about that level of solidarity, because in the past Europe have not shown an ounce of kindness to this country, shoving
I suppose the pressure came on previously, Brian.
Well, I think one thing that does concern me, and I haven't studied the whole report in detail, there's good things in it obviously and broadly welcome it, but one thing that does concern me is how you change the relationship and the accountability between the public and the Gardaí, because there's a breakdown big time in that relationship in a lot of the local communities. And one of the things obviously they talk about doing is freeing up the Gardaí to be on the beat more, to be out
it's in every report, isn't it?
It's in every report. Where's the political will to implement that, and how do they implement it? And then how do you oversee the sort of accountability to the public? Now, there are local policing forums. I go to mine in my local area all the time. But really, the police come in and they give, the Gardaí come in and they give all the statistical reports about crime in the area. But the actual problems the community may have with the Gardaí don't surface there, because the people who have the problems don't trust these bodies and they don't attend them. But I know that people have problems. Like there was an illegal eviction in Rathmines the other day, and the Gardaí stood by and did not protect the people who were being illegally evicted. I had a similar situation in Kilmainham, where two lads were being evicted from a flat by a gang of heavies, and I had to call the guards almost 20 times. They refused to come down. They said it's a civil matter, till I said, if anything happens to me, I'm going to prevent these guys with their big hammers and crowbars. If anything happens to me, I'm holding you accountable. And then they come down and prevented it. But if I wasn't a TD, that wouldn't have happened. There's a real breakdown in trust between the community and the Gardaí, and we saw that in North Frederick Street in particular.
I think one of
necessarily. Would you see more protests on housing? I mean, Peter McVerry on the programme a few days ago was predicting this is going to escalate.
Absolutely, and there's going to be loads of them tomorrow in all sorts of areas and in all sorts of ways. And on the 3rd of October, there's a national demonstration outside the Dáil. In People Before Profits private member time, we're putting a cross-party motion to the government to argue that we need to move to building public and affordable housing on public land and stop pampering developers by giving them our public land. This new initiative will end up seeing developers gaining 60% of public land for building private, for-profit homes. We need affordable
creating jobs,
and public
putting
homes.
roofs over people's heads.
And you can create jobs and put roofs over people's head by building public and affordable homes on public land and not pampering developers. So all of the NGOs, all of the political parties and trade unions, and a big cohort of students and young people will be outside the Dáil on the 3rd of October to insist that the government change the trajectory they're taking, which is pampering private developers and not looking after the public good.
I agree with Brenda's issue in terms of protest. I think there's a right to protest. There won't be one extra house built because of the protest, but if people feel strongly about something and they want to be outside Dáil Éireann, I think that's appropriate. I was very concerned about what I saw in terms of the interaction with the Gardaí.
Were you concerned when you saw hooded Gardaí defending hooded security men?
If you just give me the space to finish, then I'll be as concerned as you are.
The narrative has changed.
Well, just to finish my point, Brid, it's very dangerous to encourage. And I thought Father McVerry, I was disappointed by what he said there. Let's be frank about this. I have experienced some of my staff being intimidated and phones being put in their faces by others to try and get them to respond in a way to throw it up on social media and be abused. The Gardaí have a different role. They're there to moderate the peace. They were the Commissioner made comments about the gear that was worn, and that shouldn't happen again. But
Actually,
the housing
what the
issue
commissioner said was they should have had helmets as well as hoods.
Exactly.
Yeah, to be fair
if
to
they
them,
were
though,
wearing
to be fair,
the proper
a couple of individuals were responsible, presumably, for what that Garda was
Exactly.
subject to. It was entirely unforgivable.
Full of
It was
wrongs.
wrong.
It was not the protesters.
Yeah, exactly, but it
But to
happened.
paint everybody, all the protesters with that brush is equally wrong.
It is, and
did
nobody
that,
did
whoever did
that.
that should not have done it, and they should be apprehended, and they should be subjected.
And it's
to
under
the course of
investigation.
law.
Did you not
There
think,
should be an
though,
investigation,
that
but that does not colour everybody who was
It
involved in
doesn't,
that
and it
protest.
doesn't take from the value of a
It doesn't colour the
protest.
people who are occupying the building.
Absolutely.
And somebody said earlier, you need to be highly organised and disciplined. That's exactly what they are.
Yeah,
I've
and it's
been in the
interesting-
building and I've seen how they organise their occupations, how disciplined, how
But
organised,
where was
how
the discipline,
accountable
Brid,
they
though,
are.
when the Take Back the City, I think is Owen O'Fuegon, was asked about the practice of putting up and naming and identifying Gardaí and saying this guy needs a bullet in the head? He didn't condemn it. He said he didn't condone it, but he did not condemn it. Now, there is a big gap between not condoning.
Hang on a second. You keep trying to change the narrative. What actually happened there was outrageous.
Yeah.
Hooded security
didn't say
men
that.
from the north broke into the building and started dragging young students out.
And here's-
and the guards
No, but deal with the
oversaw
point
it
Brenda has
and
just
allowed it to
made,
happen.
Brid, in the brief minute that you have
Can I
left.
just say a point on the hooded security men? We need legislation to make sure that they don't have
Right,
free reign because they're not covered by existing legislation. I agree
Can I
with
make
you
a
on
point
that.
about
Can I just say
Gardaí?
one thing about your illegal? You mentioned that people were evicted illegally earlier in your presentation. That's wrong. If people are evicted illegally, the system has to protect them.
But they don't.
And the
But do you
Take
believe
Back the
people should
City
have
initiative-
obey court orders if they've been told to vacate a premises that they've occupied?
They were never asked to vacate the premises. Had the guards knocked on the door and said, we have a court order here, we're asking you to leave, they actually would have left.
In fairness,
that didn't
they
happen.
did leave once the private
Once
security
they
guard showed.
Gardaí, because people say the guards have to protect themselves. I live in South Central, and there's constantly roadblocks over the drug
Gangland
gangs.
stuff, yeah.
And the guards are there with weapons, and they're not hooded. And wouldn't you think that they're more susceptible to danger from the drug gangs than they are from a handful of students? But they
You've
don't- they
had
don't
the
matter.
last word,
Come back
Brid
to us.
Smith.
It won't build an extra house. We have work to do on housing.
Thank you very much indeed for coming in.